April 1945. Frankfurt am Main, Germany. The city looked like a man after a long illness, burned, but still alive. Charred walls of buildings stood like skeletons, with wind blowing ash and torn newspaper pieces, showing faces nobody remembered anymore. The air smelled of smoke and something metallic, a smell everyone who survived had gotten used to. Emil, a 12-year-old boy with gray eyes and a dirty scarf, sat on the ruins of a pharmacy. His mother used to come here. Now only the sign with a faded letter A remained. He ate snow to stave off hunger and listened to engines roaring somewhere far away. Americans, he whispered. He felt like he knew who they were. People who dropped the bombs that erased his home. People who should have been monsters. He held a small piece of metal close to his chest, a fragment of his father's helmet, his talisman. A column of vehicles appeared on the main street. Dust engines, voices. Emil froze behind a wall and peeked out. They weren't like the ones he imagined. They didn't shout. One soldier helped another pull a stuck vehicle from the mud. Another laughed, showing someone a photo. And amidst all that noise, eyes met. One of them, tall, in a worn uniform, noticed a boy. Didn't shout, just looked and nodded slightly. Emil didn't understand what it meant, but for some reason he didn't run. He stood behind the wall, hiding half his face. The Americans walked past, the sound of their steps rolling down the street like heavy rain. He felt a trembling in his chest, not the kind of fear that makes you scream, but the kind that turns you to stone. The soldier who nodded now stood closer. On his helmet, a white star. On his face, weariness, like all adults who had survived too much. "Hey, kid," he said softly, no threat in his voice. Emil didn't understand the words, but the tone was strange, not angry, more gentle, as if this man spoke not to an enemy, but to someone he pitied. The soldier pulled something wrapped in paper from his bag and tossed it closer to him. Emil flinched and jumped back. Then he crawled carefully, like approaching a trap, unwrapped the paper. Inside was a piece of bread and a small chocolate, real warm. His heart raced. He couldn't believe it. Poison. A thought flashed, but the smell was too real. He hadn't eaten anything like it since the winter, when his mother still made soup from leftover potatoes. He looked at the bread, then at the soldier. He stood there, waiting, as if he knew the boy would take it anyway. Emil grabbed the food, but didn't eat in front of him, just nodded awkwardly, like returning a debt that didn't exist. The soldier smiled. Real, not like in posters. Then walked on, catching up with the column. Emil sat in the snow and slowly ate the bread. Crumbs stuck to his fingers, lips, cheeks, and suddenly it felt strange, heavy in his chest. He didn't know why. He should have been happy, but his mind buzzed. They're the enemies, so why are they kindred in their own? The street became quiet again. Only the tracks of American boots remained in the wet ground. Emil looked at them, and for the first time in a long time felt no hatred, only confusion. That day he realized, the war didn't end when the bombs fell, but when someone first offered you bread. The next day, the city woke differently. Not to explosions, not to screams, but to the sound of foreign voices, calm, unhurried. Americans took over the town hall, posted guard by the ruined bridge, and started handing out food to those emerging from basements. Emil didn't go closer. He watched from afar, behind a pile of bricks, as people lined up, old men, women, children, all moving toward him like toward the sun, afraid to look straight at it. He heard someone whisper, "They're giving soup and bread just like that." Just like that. Those words didn't fit in Emil's head. He knew nothing in this world came for free. Even kindness was a trap, just a soft one. He spent the whole day watching. Soldiers in gray-green uniforms laughed, cleaned weapons, played cards on crates of ammo. One drew a funny face on the wall with chalk. Another kicked a soccer ball around. Nothing reminded him of the monsters adults had described. By evening, hunger twisted his stomach again. He waited until the crowd thinned, then approached the tent with the field kitchen. The smell of stew and bread burned memories. "Hey, you again," a familiar voice said. Emil looked up. The same soldier. The one who had thrown him bread yesterday. Now without a helmet, sleeves rolled up, face dusty, but the smile was the same. He approached slowly, like a wary animal. The soldier poured soup into a cup and set it in front of him. Eat. One word, clear enough without translation. Emil sat on the ground. The soup was thick, hot, smelling of onion and meat. He ate carefully, afraid someone might snatch the spoon away. The soldier sat beside him, silent. They just ate. After a few minutes, he pulled a photo from his pocket, woman and boy, maybe 10, red hair. He showed Emil and said, "My boy, same age, maybe." Emil looked, unsure what to say, just nodded. The soldier nodded back, smiling again, not out of pity, simply human. When the soup was finished, Emil returned the cup. The soldier ruffled his hair, like a father to a son, and said, "Come back tomorrow." Emil didn't reply, but as he walked away, for the first time in a long while, he didn't look back. Inside him was a strange feeling, like the world he lived in had cracked, and through the crack, light seeped in. The next morning, the city was foggy again, thick, as if the air itself didn't want to show its scars. Smoke rose from the ruins. Someone burned planks. Someone boiled soup from herbs and water. Emil walked along familiar streets, keeping to the side until he saw it, the field kitchen by the old school. He didn't know the soldier's name, but he knew he would be there. And he was sitting on a crate, cleaning boots, humming a tune like a song without words. When he saw the boy, he raised a hand, not as a commander, but like an older brother. "Morning, kid," he said. Emil didn't understand, but guessed. "Guten Morgen," he whispered. The soldier smiled, patted the crate beside him, inviting Emil to sit. Emil approached slowly and sat. They were silent. Neither knew the other's language, but it didn't matter. Sometimes silence speaks louder than words. The soldier pulled out a pencil and paper, drew a sun, a tree, a house, then handed the pencil to Emil. He hesitated, then added a boy with a dog. The soldier laughed, patted him on the shoulder, and nodded. "Nice." Emil didn't understand, but smiled back. Then the soldier gestured. "Hungry?" Emil nodded. He set a bowl of stew and bread before him. The food no longer scared him as it had the first time. Now it was almost ritual, their silent conversation through spoon and bread. Other children approached, dirty, thin, wary. The soldier didn't shoo them away. On the contrary, he waved them over. Soon they all sat together, some eating, some just warming hands by the pot. Emil watched them, feeling a strange pride, as if he would first dare come here. When the meal ended, the soldier pulled out something else, a piece of chocolate wrapped in foil. He broke it in half, giving one piece to Emil, keeping the other. "Friends," he said, pointing between himself and the boy. "FRNs." Emil repeated carefully, tasting the word. They both laughed. For a brief, almost impossible moment, the war seemed to vanish. There were only two left, adult and child, who didn't understand each other's words, but understood everything else. When the sun began to set, Emil got up and walked home, if these ruins could even be called that. In his hand, he held the chocolate wrapper like something priceless. It rustled softly in the wind, whispering, "You're alive, Emil. You're still alive." May days were short but bright. The snow melted, leaving muddy puddles and the smell of wet earth. Emil rushed every morning to the old school, to the field kitchen, as if there he could rediscover the world. Every step through the debris felt like stepping into a new life, even though shadows of destruction lingered everywhere. The soldier waited almost always, sometimes with other children, slowly learning to trust this strange new order, but more often it was just Emil and him. They continued their silent conversation, drawings, gestures, food, and occasional laughter. Emil began noticing small things, the way the soldier tied his shoelaces methodically, the careful way he cleaned his boots, how he spoke softly to the children, sometimes muttering to himself in a language Emil couldn't understand, yet somehow felt comforting. The boy observed everything, the rhythm of their work, the way the soldier distributed food, the small nods and smiles exchanged among the children. Emil learned to read the unspoken language of trust. He began recognizing the difference between fear and safety, hesitation and courage. One day, the soldier brought an old picture book. Emil opened it, and the world suddenly seemed brighter. Ruined houses and shadowed streets faded in his mind, replaced by forests, rivers, cities, castles. People smiling without expecting anything in return. For the first time in months, Emil felt a small spark of hope that the world could be bigger than ruins and war. "Learn?" the soldier asked, pointing at the pictures. Emil nodded slowly, unsure at first, then gained confidence. He began naming objects, softly at first, then louder, and the soldier clapped his shoulder each time, as if each word was a victory over silence and fear. Gradually, a new routine emerged. They ate together, drew together, remained silent together. Emil noticed the quiet rituals of life in this broken city. The steam rising from the field kitchen, the sunlight falling across cracked walls, the cautious smiles of children learning to trust again. He felt for the first time that someone near him was not an enemy, not a stranger, but a human being. One afternoon, another soldier appeared with a small toy, a wooden dog with faded paint. Emil accepted it carefully, cradling it like it was made of glass. The soldier just smiled and nodded, as if to say, "This is yours. Take it." Emil realized slowly that gestures, even small ones, could carry the weight of kindness. He reflected on everything he had seen in these few days. All the assumptions about people he had carried, about enemies, about strangers, about what it meant to survive, were starting to crumble. People he had been taught to fear were capable of care, laughter, patience, and trust. The more he watched, the more Emil felt an unfamiliar sense of safety, a tentative hope. Maybe the war wasn't over just in cities, but in hearts too. Each day brought small lessons. Emil learned to serve soup, to pass bread without fear, to sit quietly with other children, to share, to watch, to notice. He began to understand a delicate balance between caution and courage, between suspicion and trust. And slowly, imperceptibly, he began to trust, not just the soldiers, but himself and the possibility that the world could be more than ash and fear. June brought warmth and the smell of fresh earth. Frankfurt slowly awoke from its long slumber of destruction. Emil no longer sat alone among the ruins. He had become part of a small community. Children gradually learning to trust the Americans, and soldiers who were more than just strangers in uniform. Each morning began the same way. John, the soldier Emil had already named in his mind, waited by the ruined school. That morning, 3 more boys approached Emil. They were bigger and older, trying to intimidate him by showing empty hands and frowning. Emil didn't run. He had learned something important. Fear isn't the only language people speak. John noticed this and nodded quietly. "Today, help me," he said, pointing to a crate of potatoes. Emil picked up one potato after another, watching the soldiers demonstrate how to clean and cut them safely. Gradually, the older boys started helping too, guided by example rather than force. Everyone learned by doing. Nobody was punished for mistakes, and every small act of cooperation built trust. After the work, John handed Emil a piece of chalk and asked him to draw the streets of the city. Emil hesitated at first, then began. He drew ruined houses, scattered rubble, abandoned cars, and slowly, people appeared in the drawings, smiling, lining up for soup, playing with a ball. The city came alive on paper in a way it had not in reality. "That's good," John said, pointing to the drawing. Emil felt warmth in his chest. These weren't just lines on paper. They were his way of rebuilding the world. Every stroke, every figure, every smile was a tiny act of restoration. Evenings were quieter. Emil would walk back to the ruins of his old home, sitting on the fragments of walls, watching the wind scatter ash and torn papers. Life was returning in small gestures, a laugh here, a footstep there, a quiet conversation in a foreign language. These were the new rhythms of the city, fragile but real. He remembered his parents. They were gone, and Emil felt their absence keenly. But in their place was someone else, John, the other soldiers, and children who slowly became friends. They didn't demand, scold, or fear. They offered small gifts, bread, chocolate, toys, books. But most importantly, they gave him something invisible he had not felt in a long time: trust. Emil realized the world around him was slowly becoming more than ruins. A new life was growing from the old, and he could help build it with his hands, heart, and actions. For the first time, he looked at what could be restored rather than only at what was lost. At night, lying in the cold basement, he held the wooden dog and thought, "I will survive. And if they can be kind, then maybe I can do something good in this world too." Tomorrow, he would return to the field kitchen and again see that life could be built amid ruins, not just hidden from them. Emil was no longer the boy who feared everything and everyone. He had become a small observer of a new world, a world where humanity could emerge even where it seemed to have vanished. July in Frankfurt was strange. Strange in how it combined life and death, destruction and rebirth. The sun shone brightly, as if reminding everyone that the world still existed, even when everything around seemed dead. Ruins that just a month ago had seemed hopeless were now places where life slowly began to push through the debris. Children ran through the ruined streets, laughing and playing. The sound was both odd and wonderful, a music set against the long-standing silence that had blanketed the city for so long. Emil no longer hid. He walked the streets with confidence he had never known, holding the wooden dog in his hand as a symbol of something new, something his own. He no longer feared the Americans. He saw them as people who helped, who smiled, who cared, even though by every rule he had been taught they should have been enemies. Each morning, John waited at the ruined school. They spent time in the field kitchen, helping distribute food to other children, and then drew and played. Emil watched as people around him learned to trust each other. Old men came out of basements. Women brought water and supplies. Children who had hidden in shadows gradually grew brave. The city slowly reclaimed its rhythms, its smells, its sounds. One day, John suggested Emil go with him to the other side of the city, to the old park, which had been almost completely destroyed by bombs. Emil hesitated, but curiosity won. Along the way, they saw other children playing, someone repairing a roof, someone walking with a bucket of water. Just weeks ago, such sights would have seemed impossible. In the park stood charred swings, broken benches, shattered trees. John showed Emil how to pull himself up on the swing set, and the boy laughed as he nearly fell. These simple movements, this laughter, it was like a small miracle among the ruins. Later, John pulled out a box of pencils and paper, and Emil began to draw everything he saw. The park, the children relearning to smile, soldiers helping locals. Every drawing was a small act of restoration, an attempt to bring life back where it seemed forever lost. On the way home, Emil noticed details he had missed before. A woman carrying a bucket of water smiled at John. A boy handed an apple to another child. Someone tried to fix a damaged roof. These small acts of trust, care, and attention felt immensely important to Emil. He realized that restoration of the world begins with these small gestures, not orders, not grand deeds, but simple acts of humanity. In the evening, Emil sat on the rubble of his old home, holding the wooden dog, thinking about the past. His parents were gone, impossible to bring back. But around him were people showing that life was still possible, that friendship, trust, and kindness were real, even among ruins. For the first time, Emil understood that the world could be rebuilt with his own hands, and that each day, every action, every word could be a brick in the foundation of a new life. That day, he said one word to John in English: "Friend." The soldier smiled, nodded, and repeated, "Yes, friend." August in Frankfurt was hot and humid, but for Emil, it had become more than just weather. The city was slowly coming back to life, and every corner, every ruined building seemed to tell him that life went on. Rubble was no longer just danger. It was now a place to explore, to play, sometimes even find something useful. Emil walked the streets with his wooden dog and a box of pencils. He hid less and observed more. Every morning began at the field kitchen, where John was already waiting with other children. That day, more kids came, older and younger alike, all cautious, all curious. Emil felt an unusual sense of responsibility. He was older than many of them and could now show how to behave, how to trust people. "Today we help," John said, handing out bowls of soup. Emil took one and began distributing to the other children, noticing how each piece of food became more than just nourishment. It was trust, a smile, a moment where fear eased. After the meal, John suggested walking through the streets to see where they could help rebuild. They moved slowly, peering into alleys, helping carry debris, smiling at passers-by. Emil noticed a street that had once been shadows and fear now buzzing with movement and life. On one street, they met a woman carrying an infant. She looked frightened and tired, but John approached softly. Emil saw her face relax. She allowed him to carry a bucket of water. This small act melted part of her fear and taught Emil that kindness is measured in deeds, not words. In the evenings, John would pull out a book he had brought. They read together. Stories of other countries, children surviving wars, small victories, and friendships. Emil felt the world growing beyond the ruins, filled with possibilities. He began to understand that the story of his city was not only destruction and fear, but also beginnings, small but real. As the sun set, Emil returned through the broken streets. He now recognized almost all the children who came to the field kitchen. Familiar faces replaced shadows, and trust grew, step by step, day by day. For the first time, Emil felt more than just survival. He felt part of a new world. He understood that a world where one could trust, laugh, and help others already existed. Every step, every word, every action became a step toward light, breaking even to the deepest ruins. At night, lying on the basement floor, Emil held his wooden dog and thought of the future. His mind was no longer full of fear. It was full of plans, how to help other children, how to protect the weaker, how to live and create a new world from the ruins of the old. For the first time in a long while, Emil slept calmly, feeling that tomorrow would bring new discoveries, new friendships, and small miracles that make up life. He understood that the world could be kinder than it seemed, even when everything appeared lost. And in that thought, there was hope, bright, like the July sun over the ruins. September brought coolness and freshness after the hot August. Frankfurt still lay in ruins, but the city no longer felt dead. Children's voices, the clatter of water buckets, the laughter of people beginning to rebuild their homes, all merged into a quiet but confident symphony of new life. Emil was no longer the boy hiding in the shadows of destroyed streets. He was part of this world, part of a small community of children and soldiers, creating a sense of home where homes were almost gone. Every day, he helped distribute food, carried water, supported younger children, and learned to draw and write. His drawings decorated the walls of the field kitchen, reminding everyone that life can push through rubble. One day, John took him to the ruins of an old bookstore. Together, they lifted dusty, battered boxes of books, still readable. Emil carefully opened one. The pages smelled of paper and time. He read individual words aloud, trying to piece them into meaning. John smiled and nodded, showing that every small step was a victory. Emil realized that the trust he had begun feeling for John and the others now extended to the world around him. He no longer looked at ruins with horror. He saw possibilities. Empty houses could be future shelters, destroyed streets places to play, rubble materials for creativity. The world that once seemed dead was coming alive in the hands of people willing to create good. In the evenings, Emil and John sat on the ruins of the old pharmacy, watching the sunset. Orange-pink rays fell across the destroyed buildings and dusty streets. Emil held the wooden dog, while John showed him how to draw maps of the city in the sand, dreaming of the future. "You see, kid," John said, "even here there's light." Emil nodded. He knew this. His heart no longer held only fear. He understood that light can break through even the deepest shadows, and that friendship, kindness, and small acts of humanity can rebuild the world. Weeks passed. Emil began helping other children, teaching them that the world could be kind, that bread didn't always mean threat, and that trust was not weakness but strength. When he first looked at the city, he saw not only destruction but hope breaking through every crack. He remembered his parents, his lost family, and for the first time felt no pain. He felt gratitude for bread, for a smile, for hands that helped when it seemed none would. Emil knew life continued, and he was part of it, part of the light among the ruins. He smiled, holding the wooden dog, and said to himself, "I'm alive, and the world, it can be good." The sun set over Frankfurt, painting the ruins in golden light. And in that light, Emil understood fully. Even among destruction, there was room for hope, friendship, and humanity. And now he was ready to move forward, building the world with his own hands. Emil was sitting on the rubble of the old pharmacy, holding his wooden dog, watching the city. He saw the ruins, yes, but even more, he saw people returning to life. Small gestures, once impossible to imagine, a stranger's smile, an outstretched hand, a piece of bread without conditions. Everything became part of a new world. He remembered the fear, the loneliness, the cold nights in the basement, and he realized these memories no longer ruled him. They were part of the past, but didn't define his future. John, the other soldiers, the children, they all showed him that even after the worst events, humans could remain human. Emil smiled to himself. He was alive. He had learned to trust. He had learned to hope. The world around him was still imperfect, but he now knew that kindness existed, and it could be found even where it seemed gone. He got up, clutching the wooden dog tightly, and walked through streets that had been dark only yesterday. Today there was light, laughter, and life. And in Emil's heart, there was one simple but incredibly powerful feeling. Humanity prevails if given a chance. And though many hardships lay ahead, Emil now knew the most important thing. Hope lives wherever there is someone willing to reach out a hand. Emil had become part of the rhythm of the new city. Every morning, he would walk to the field kitchen, wooden dog in hand, ready to meet John and the other children. Each day was small but significant. Distributing food, sharing stories through gestures, drawing, and slowly learning that trust could grow even in a broken world. The city was waking up. People were repairing roofs, carrying water from the dwindling streams, clearing rubble. Emil noticed details he had never seen before. An elderly man smiling as he worked, children cautiously joining a game, women exchanging small nods of thanks. The world was tiny, fragmentary, but alive. Every day, Emil learned from John how to chop vegetables safely, how to distribute food fairly, how to draw and communicate without words. John's presence was steady, a reminder that kindness wasn't just random. It could be consistent, reliable, and human. Emil noticed the younger kids slowly gaining confidence. He helped guide them, showing patience he didn't know he had. The wooden dog became a symbol of trust and companionship, someone to carry, to care for, and to share moments with. By afternoon, Emil often wandered through the streets, noticing the small acts of humanity around him. Someone shared water with a thirsty child. Someone repaired a broken chair. Someone smiled at a stranger. He realized these little gestures were how the city rebuilt itself, one kind act at a time. Evenings were for reflection. Emil would sit on the ruins of the old pharmacy, wooden dog in his lap, thinking about the progress he had witnessed. He understood that recovery wasn't only about buildings. It was about hearts, trust, and the willingness to help others without expecting anything in return. For Emil, the city had transformed from a place of fear to a place of possibilities. Each day he saw that life, though fragile, could grow among the ruins if people chose to nurture it. And in that realization, Emil felt a strength he had never known. Hope was not just an idea. It was alive in every smile, every small act, every shared meal. The sun set over Frankfurt, casting the ruins in a golden glow. Emil sat on the rubble of the old pharmacy, holding his wooden dog, and watched the city. He saw ruins, yes, but even more, he saw life returning. People slowly reclaiming the streets, small gestures of kindness, and the beginnings of community. A stranger's smile, a hand extended without conditions, a piece of bread freely given. These small acts had become part of Emil's world. They had taught him something essential. Even after the worst horrors, humans could remain human. He remembered fear, loneliness, and cold nights in the basement, but these memories no longer ruled him. They were part of the past, not the future. John, the other soldiers, and the children had shown him that trust, care, and compassion were real. Emil smiled to himself. He was alive. He had learned to trust, to hope. The world around him was not perfect, but he knew now that kindness existed and could be found even where it seemed impossible. He rose, clutching his wooden dog tightly, and walked through streets that had been dark only yesterday. Now there was light, laughter, and life. In his heart, Emil carried one simple but powerful truth. Humanity prevails when given a chance. And though many hardships lay ahead, Emil understood the most important lesson. Hope lives wherever someone extends a hand. The city was not fully restored, but Emil had seen enough to know the world could be good. He had witnessed the small miracles, shared food, a smile, a toy, a book, and realized that these were the foundations of life. Life could grow even in ruins. Emil looked around, holding his wooden dog. The ruins were no longer just reminders of war. They were a place where trust, friendship, and kindness could take root. And in that moment, he understood the truth of it all. Life continues, hearts heal, and hope endures. With a quiet smile, Emil whispered to himself, "I'm alive, and the world, it can be good."
One story has ended, but there are many more to come. Subscribe to stay up to date with the next story.